Hello and welcome to Parkinson's Life, the monthly podcast offering a voice to the global Parkinson's community. I'm Roisin McCormack, a writer here at Parkinson's Life magazine, and each month we'll be bringing together people with the experience of Parkinson's to share their stories. Through lively, open and honest conversation, we'll be exploring life with the condition, discussing some of the challenges and sharing ideas on how to live well with Parkinson's. There are an estimated 3 million women living with Parkinson's worldwide, and yet we know very little about how the condition affects them. This month, as part of our campaign to spotlight how a shocking research gap is letting down women with Parkinson's, we bring together a panel of 3 women to share their unique experiences of the condition. Sharon Krischer is a blogger based in Los Angeles, US, and was diagnosed with Parkinson's in 2009, aged 57. She was involved in the Parkinson's Foundation's ongoing Women in PD Talk initiative, which aims to address gender disparities within Parkinson's research. Omotola Thomas is a blogger and the founder of Parkinson, a Parkinson's advocacy group. She lives in Surrey in the UK and was diagnosed in 2016, aged 35. Omotola was a keynote speaker at this year's Parkinson's Eve, a conference focused on the issues facing women with the condition, and she also spoke at the 5th World Parkinson's Congress in Kyoto, Japan. Mariette Robijn, a blogger and coach at Rocksteady Boxing, lives near Amsterdam, the Netherlands, and was diagnosed 7 years ago at 46. She recently appeared as a guest on the BBC World Service radio series, The Truth About Parkinson's. From delayed diagnosis to medication that doesn't work and the challenges of being a mother, Sharon, Omotola and Mariette highlight how the women in Parkinson's data gap has impacted on their treatment and their everyday lives, and share advice for other women with the condition.
Good morning, or should I say good evening, Mariette and Omotola. This is Sharon from Los Angeles.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Mariette. This is Omotola from the United Kingdom.
Hi, United Kingdom. Hi, United States. This is Mariette from Amsterdam. Omotola, we've met in person briefly.
Right.
Sharon, I haven't met. It's lovely to have this talk with you. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to share to each other and to the audience of this podcast.
I'm excited too. Absolutely.
This is going to be fun. One of the biggest issues for a lot of women is not being taken seriously by their doctors. And I've been involved in a few studies. I was co-chair on the Women in PD Talk study with the Parkinson's Foundation. And we heard from woman after woman, especially those who were premenopausal. It's in your head. Well, it was in their head, but not in the way the doctor meant it. That it was hormones, that it was stress. They were needed to slow down. But it was Parkinson's never came into the picture. So women were diagnosed much later than they should be.
Thank you, Sharon. So I got my diagnosis within like 5 minutes. So there was nothing like a delay or anything. So I hear what you're saying, Sharon, but I just don't really recognize it from my personal environment. And I must admit, the first time I went to see a GP with some vague, uncomfortable feeling, which later on turned out to be Parkinson's, she said, "Oh, you're too busy with children, this, that, and the other." That was her initial reaction, and I can understand, because how big is the chance that somebody early 40s or 30s or 50s, how big is the chance that it is Parkinson's? Because it's hard to diagnose, and I was lucky that I decided myself to go to see a neurologist within a week. And he was he's like a Parkinson's sniffer dog, I call him, and he just noticed within 5 minutes. So there was no discussion, no nothing, and he sent me to a scan and a dot SPECT scan and an MRI, and that was it. Omotola, how do you feel? What's your take on that, on diagnosis for women?
For me, I think one of the things that I've struggled with is the fact that I don't think people have studied how Parkinson's affects women, and I'm not just talking about symptoms, I'm talking about how it affects you as a wife and as a mother.
Mhm.
And I think part of this problem is because I think if you look through research, you'll see that most of the research that have been conducted have had predominantly male subjects. And I worry about that because if many of the treatments are being tailored to men, and if most of the research is being conducted by male patients, sorry, I said subjects, male patients,
Yeah.
um, then I don't know that we're able to get the full picture of how this illness truly impacts women.
That's one of the reasons why I was involved in this study. Was we went to the women to find out how it was impacting them, not just with their doctors, but their lifestyles.
Exactly.
You were a very young onset, and did it take you a while to get diagnosed because your doctors did not think it could possibly be Parkinson's?
It took almost 6 years,
Okay,
and you're absolutely right.
yeah.
Yes.
And then one of the other issues that we found is that women who are used to being the mothers and the caregivers all of a sudden are placed in a different role.
Sharon, I completely agree with you. All over the world, women are predominantly uh, caregivers, and they play the caregiver role in their homes. And when you're not able to provide that care, not only are you not able to provide the care for your family, you now need the care. It really tips the balance, and it's a very difficult thing to handle and to deal with.
Well, I agree with you completely on that. But unfortunately, a lot of women and men suddenly say, "Oh, I have this disease. I can't do anything." Coming to terms with it is very difficult, especially as a woman, because the image of the Parkinson's patient is an old man who shakes and shuffles.
Yeah, that's that's true, Sharon. What you're saying, because when I first heard the word Parkinson's, I turned to Google, and 60-70% of the images turning up on Google were old grey
Right.
shuffling dusty man, and I thought, oh, that's not me. Um, so the good news is I haven't yet
Nor have
turned
I.
into an old grey man, so that's the lucky bit.
The first doctor I went to was a neurologist, and unfortunately, I was diagnosed with breast cancer the same week that I went to this neurologist, and it was very early stage. I had a lumpectomy and radiation.
Hmm.
And the first doctor I
Wow.
went to gave me absolutely no information. He said, "Here's some Requip, take this," and he increased it, and sent me on my way. And it was terrible. I'm going through radiation. All I'm doing is sleeping. I have questions. I call him. He doesn't respond. After about 8 months of that, I called my internist, who then sent me to a movement disorder specialist, and she gave me the information. But 10 years ago, there wasn't very much online. She told me about the Fox Foundation and the Parkinson's Disease Foundation and patients like me, and that was all that was out there at the time. Now, and I found one blogger. Now there are hundreds of us. So it's changed quite a bit in the 10 years. Now women are given much more information about what it's like to be a woman. And I'm seeing, these studies, every organization is doing something about women with Parkinson's now. It's become much more prominent anywhere you go. You'll see something about women in Parkinson's, which I think is great.
So would have made that a difference for you, Sharon, at diagnosis if you had that information? Would it have made a difference?
Absolutely. I've been in therapy for a long time. The first therapy was for the breast cancer, not dealing with the Parkinson's, but it would have made a difference had I had that input at the very beginning about coping with this as a woman. I went into hiding basically for the first year. I couldn't deal with it.
Mm-hmm. That's hard.
Yeah. And breast cancer was easy because
Yeah.
everybody talks about it. And I've written about that. And, but Parkinson's, we hide it. There's a real tendency to hide it, especially women. Omotola, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience with hormones and medication, whether it's working, it's not working?
Right. So it's actually funny. I never realized that there was or might be a correlation until I think it was about a year ago, when I was organizing a conference called Parkinson's Eve for women with Parkinson's. It was organized by women with Parkinson's for women with Parkinson's. And somebody said something during one of the meetings, and she said, "Well, our medication only works 3 weeks out of 4." And I said, "What?" And she was like, "Yeah, haven't you noticed that your meds don't work?" And that really struck me because I'd never really connected those dots. So over the next few months, I decided to start paying more attention, and I realized that during my periods, my gait in particular would be more shuffled. So that was probably the only motor symptom that I noticed. But I I tended to get upset much more easily than I would have normally. So I guess the way I explained it previously was I had heightened emotions, and it was very weird. Yeah, it's not fun to talk about.
It's not fun to have to experience either
No.
at all. Yeah, I did discuss this actually with my neurologist, and he said, yes, everything will be worse during your period, everything. And it was not brushing me off at all, but he sort of admitted, yes, it will be worse, but when it's over, you'll be better, and then it will be worse, and that's what it's like at the moment.
But I wish I
He
had,
said,
I'm sorry, I wish I had known, because once I
yeah,
figured it out, then it was easier for me to, they say knowledge is power. So having that knowledge
yeah.
just made me aware of the issue, and it put me back, gave me the ability to be in better control of myself now that I knew what the problem was.
Sharon, when you've been 10 years into Parkinson's now, have you come across many female healthcare professionals for Parkinson's, or neurologists or physiotherapists? And do you feel there's any different approach?
Yes. The first neurologist I went to was a man,
Mm-hmm.
and he was awful for me. Although I have friends, women friends, who go to him for MS, and they love him. So I think it depends on the disease. My movement disorder specialist that I went to 8 months later was a woman, and I've been with her ever since. We have a wonderful rapport. Um, we understand each other. She understands me. She understands why I'm motivated to push myself as much as I do. Um, and she seems to be much more empathetic, more caring.
Mm-hmm. And is that because she's a woman?
I don't know. I think it's just who she is.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I can relate to that. And you, Omotola, how about you?
So I actually have not come across any female neurologist. I think other than Dr. DeLeon, who spoke at our conference last year.
Mm-hmm.
I've not even met her physically, but the two neurologists that I've seen since my diagnosis have been male. I think they have done as good a job as they can do.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that a female neurologist will definitely have a different perspective. A male neurologist is not going to understand fully or not understand as much as a female neurologist the heightened emotions I was talking about during my period. So I think a female neurologist will definitely have a different, and I don't know if this is the right term, perhaps more useful perspective for women with Parkinson's. And this is not to say that women have to have female neurologists. I don't have one, but I think they have a different vantage point.
Yeah, it's different. I would definitely not say better or worse, or it's just different.
I agree with you, and I was speaking specifically as it relates to the hormonal
Mm,
changes. Again, I've had two male neurologists, and I've had no issues. I'm not looking to change them. I'm not looking for a female neurologist. I just feel like, they would probably,
Mhm.
specifically as it relates to that one issue of how
Yeah.
hormones impact
Mhm.
us, they will probably be more empathetic because they're women,
That's right. That's right.
because of their biological makeup,
Yeah, that's right.
not because they're better doctors.
No, and I don't know. I think it's just with my doctors, it's just how it happened that the second doctor was just better for me. Didn't matter whether she was male or female.
Right.
Um,
I always say the best doctor doesn't have to feel what I feel. You don't have to feel
no,
what I feel to be a good doctor.
That's a good point.
absolutely.
So, even though they are subjects you'd rather not discuss because you're embarrassed about it, or these practical things you have to do when you have your period. You're not going to call your neurologist saying, "Look, how am I going to use this thing when I have my period?" No, you'll just figure it out yourself. But it might help if we came up with a checklist. Like, these are the things women are affected by more than, or differently than men, like hormones or periods, or PMS, or what have you. If you draw up a checklist and say, look, this may be a woman specific checklist, then that might come in helpful for your next appointment.
That is a great idea about a checklist. One of us should write about it on our blog.
A checklist of what to bring to your next appointment with your doctor or healthcare professional. But that's on the individual level. That really should somehow connect to a research level. So we can deal with it ourselves in the consultation room, but it has to be dealt with at a research level as well.
I think the main thing though is that if you're happy with your doctor, stay with the doctor, whether woman or
Absolutely.
man. And if you're not happy, change doctors, because this is a long-term relationship. You need somebody who understands you.
I agree.
Omotola, hearing your story, you were a young mother. Were your children born before or after you got the Parkinson's diagnosis?
My children were born before. I got diagnosed in 2016. My daughter was born in 2009 and my son in 2006. But my tremors started, I think, 2009, 2010. And my son was my daughter had just been born, and my son was 2.5, 3. So they've always known me to shake. They've always known me to have a tremor.
Right.
But the actual diagnosis didn't come until they were, I think, 7 and 10. And yeah, it has impacted me as a mom. I did speak with them at the time. My husband and I spoke with them at the time I got diagnosed. Even though they were about 7 and 10, then we tried to explain it to them in a child-friendly manner, in a way that they could understand, because I think it's important. I think it's important to give children as much information as is necessary,
I
and
agree.
that they can deal with. And I'll give I'll give reasons why. My children go to school. I pick them up. Their friends see me shaking. Their friends see me walking rigidly and stiffly, and they ask them, what's wrong with your mom? I want them to be able to answer that question confidently. I want them to be able to answer that question without shame or embarrassment. And I want them to be able to use that as an opportunity to educate other people. So I have very frank conversations with them about my illness, about my symptoms. But I had mentioned earlier, it does impact me in my role as a mom. I get tired and fatigued quite easily. I'm not able to attend as many of their school activities as I want to. I'm not able to cook a variety of meals for them. And I think this is good for them in the long run, but they're having to do things now. Like my daughter helps with cooking, she's 10. They both help with laundry, the dishes. Yeah, so, and they've been doing this for a couple years.
Right. If you know that you have a maximum of two, we call it days, part of the days,
Yeah.
like a limited available active hours. I don't know how to
Right.
say that. It's limited. You have, your budget is so limited. Your budget in
Exactly.
energy, your budget in actions you can do, and you have to be so careful because Omotola, as what you say, you want to see a sports game by your children or a school event. You have to decide: do I do this or do I do that? You constantly have to make a decision: should I go to the school event, or should I clean the house, for example,
And
or
make
should I
lunch or
cook,
dinner.
or make lunch, or go
Exactly.
to work?
Sharon, what about you? Has Parkinson's impacted your role as a caregiver, as a mother, as a wife?
Not a lot, but I will tell you, my mother had a massive stroke about 6 months after my Parkinson's started, after I started with the first doctor. And she lived in another city, and I was flying back and forth. And it was so hard on me to deal with her and come home. She was in St. Louis. My daughter was in Chicago. I would go from one to the other. And after a while, I couldn't go see both of them at the same time. It was just too hard. I would come home and I would be wiped out for a week or longer.
Wow.
So, unfortunately, my mother passed away 4 years ago, so I don't have to go there anymore. But I could not be her caregiver and take care of myself at the same time. It was impossible.
Right.
As far as now, and I was not on Cinemed at the time, so I am now. I'm fairly under control, so I have some problems with my grandchildren, keeping up with them, but a lot of that is age. But my first granddaughter was born before I went on medication, and I had a terrible tremor. I was afraid to hold her. It was hard. It was very hard. Fortunately, by the time the second grandchild was born, I was on medication and I didn't have that problem. But with the first one, it was scary. What if I dropped her? But my oldest daughter, who lives in Chicago, once said to me, "Does anybody go to the doctor with you?" And I said, "Well, your father goes about once or twice a year with me." But she says, "Well, what about her sisters?" And I said, "No, I never thought about taking them with me. I never thought to ask them." My husband has been wonderful in so many ways. He's very supportive of all the things that I do. I know he's listening because he will make statements in front of other people about Parkinson's, and I'm blown away that he has come up with this.
That's incredible, Sharon. Because I said that's incredible because I have the similar experiences. My husband is extremely supportive. I'm very grateful. But also, I don't want to say keeps a distance in terms of learning, at least learning so much about it or attending Parkinson's events with me. But when I do bring up something, he seems to know about it. And I'm like, where did you learn that from? So we have very similar experiences. What about you, Mariette?
I'm laughing that they can read, our husbands.
If they choose to. If they choose to. Who does read my blog?
They can read. It's when I was first diagnosed, I said to my husband, "Hope that I'll be grey and shuffling and this and that and the other, and will you still love me in 10 years' time?" And he said, "Of course I will. You're my beautiful girl, so why wouldn't I?"
Yeah.
It's so sweet. Can I ask both of you something? I think the three of us are extremely fortunate. One thing that has been echoed around is we all have very supportive husbands. What advice would we give to women who are dealing with this illness that are either unmarried or married and don't have the same type of support that we have?
Find a Parkinson's buddy, find a Parkinson's mentor who will be there for you when you have those questions. I found that my Parkinson's friends are invaluable.
Right.
Have you found that too? The community is wonderful. Whether you go to boxing classes for PD or dancing or whatever it may be, You find other people who are in the same situation that you can talk to, who understand what you're going through. Don't isolate. Do not isolate yourself. Do you find that?
Right. I agree with you. And even as supportive as my husband is, I still find that I still need that support from the Parkinson's community. What about you, Mariette?
I think the best thing, the best advice ever given to me was by one of our children when I was in the first year or so after diagnosis. I was crying at the kitchen table, thinking about all these horrible things that were going to happen to me and this, that, and oh dear. And then she was 14 or 15 and she said, "Look, Mama, don't make Parkinson's your first thought. Make something else your first thought, something nice." And that's wonderful.
Oh, how
And
wonderful.
Wow.
my husband
Wonderful.
he's very, very, very optimistic. So and he's very good in numbers. So he will say, "Look, how big is the chance that you will get everything related to Parkinson's, and how big is the chance that you will get your personal package of Parkinson's symptoms next week? Both chances are zero. So come on. I mean, it's tough, but you have to be realistic as well."
Thank you, Mariette. This was really great. I learned a few things myself, and I think one of the key things, takeaways for me, was what Sharon said, which is, if you're having this illness, try not to isolate yourself. If you're feeling down, if you're feeling alone, I would say try to find somebody, a friend, your doctor, somebody to talk to, but just try not to isolate yourself.
Yeah.
Fully agree.
I learned that from Lori Mishley at the WPC. She said that is the worst thing you can do for yourself is to isolate yourself. So
Right.
get out there and be with people and have a good time as long as you can and enjoy.
Thank you, Sharon, and thank you, Omotola. Thank you from Amsterdam. Just remember, Parkinson's is a big thing, but life for me is bigger than Parkinson's. Thanks, Parkinson's Life, for giving us the opportunity to share this these our experiences with the audience.
Right.
Yes.
Parkinson's Life magazine is produced by Speak Media on behalf of the European Parkinson's Disease Association, the leading voice for Parkinson's in Europe. For the latest research and information on how to live well with Parkinson's, visit epda.eu.com. Thanks for listening to the Parkinson's Life podcast. If you like what you've heard, please rate and review. It helps make sure others can find us. Keep a lookout for episode 6, which will be released in the coming weeks. And until then, take care.